What is up, wrestling fans? Your host with the most, George McKay. I'm in the building. I'm not here with my cohort in crime today. The Animal's not here. He is MIA today. He had some personal stuff to take care of, so he's got a personal day off. But I am here in studio with a special guest. Very excited to have him here. Up-and-coming talent here in Ontario. But we're not just going to label it Ontario. We're going to branch out. Mr. Sway Archer is in the building. Sway, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me.
We are always excited to have wrestlers out there because a lot of our fan base is primarily based out of the U.S. We actually have a really big following in the U.S., so we're very honored and passionate that we have those fans that tune in every week. We also have a great following here in Ontario, but the funny thing is, a lot of fans in the U.S. and a lot of fans in Canada, as you know, kind of stay within their bubble.
Yeah.
Either you're all WWE, and that's it, or now you're all WWE, but you're hyping up AEW because you think there's competition, which there isn't, which we might touch on that a little bit later, get your opinion. And then, of course, you have the indie scene. Every city, every major city, anyways, usually has a very strong indie scene.
And even some of the tinier cities, which I find very interesting.
Well, Seth Rollins got a school back home in Davenport, Iowa, where he's from. He's got about 20 wrestlers on the school, and he himself, they do local shows there almost every week. And when he has the time off, he'll come out, have a match with the guy who he sees as the bright spot of his organization. And try to get them, like, you know, a little...
Give them the rub.
4-star match under the radar type thing. Like, hey, Triple H, keep your eye on this guy. Which, I mean, if you're Triple H, we all know Seth Rollins is pretty much the face of your company right now. You're going to take his opinion very seriously.
Yeah. He is... I find it fascinating how he's come up because setback after setback after setback with, you know...
that first great run and then the knee injury.
Yep.
Right? Takes him completely out of WrestleMania that year. You're talking about writers who already suck, having to go back and try to Hey, we don't post here on Straight Talk. We post we hold back no punches.
Yeah.
We have our opinions of the great writers and leadership in NXT and how fantastic they are. I mean, I'm rocking the Gargano shirt. Enough said, right?
Yeah.
But then we have our opinion of what we like to call the Vince McMahon sprinkle, and everything's great till you get. When you're on NXT.
Till you get that sprinkle.
Till you get that sprinkle, because there's so many great characters. Like, I'm paranoid as heck when Undisputed Era or when Velveteen Dream come up, because I know those great characters and how well they've been developed. We're going to lose everything in the Vince McMahon sprinkle, as we call it.
I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of faith in individual talent. I've never been the type of person to put faith in an organization, but I've always been the type of person to say, if you are good enough on your own, there won't be much that can stop you. Where it's like, I see... Like, everybody talks about their favorite coming up to the main roster and getting ruined. I look at a guy like Pete Dunne and I say, I don't know how they would ruin him.
I don't see that being possible either, just because of how old school he is, mixed with that new attitude flair. There's not really much... Because, I mean, old school, you're talking about breaking the bones, dissecting, pretty much tearing your opponent down.
They compare him to Fit Finlay a lot. It's an apt comparison.
I think it's a strong comparison. Only Fit Finlay went through that hardcore Slim Shady phase where everything was bright blonde. Remember that? Remember that? And you know he had the white blonde hair, but it's like he kind of went little Donald Trump on us for a bit there. He got a little orange.
Oh yeah,
tried to get a little tan. Tried to get some spray tan going on.
That is one of the things that I am the most grateful for. Is that
you don't have to worry about a spray tan.
I will never worry about a spray tan. Like, even if my skin tone is somewhat uneven, like if I go on vacation, I come back, it's a bit uneven, I'm still not spray tanning. I'm not doing it. I don't need to. It would look so weird on me to be spray tan. So
you'd be like, do you ever watch Friends? You ever watch any old school episodes of Friends?
Yes.
So there's one episode where Ross goes into a tanning booth.
Yep.
And he misses the turn. And he counts Mississippi, as he puts it, and he comes out like an 8 on his back and a 12 on his front. He looks like somebody who just literally lost a bet. But let's get into. So we'll hold off on all our opinions of main roster because let's focus on you. Let's focus on the indie scene here and all the great stuff you're doing. So you, just to give our listeners a little backstory, you train out of Battle Arts Academy, which is Santino Marella, Anthony Corelli, aka Santino Marella's school.
Yeah, you could do it either way. He goes by both depending on what he's doing.
You know what though? We like to represent Battle Arts in a way of who it is, not the character he played.
Yeah, not
as much as I know he appreciates Santino and the character and everything that it gave him. We know that he wants to rock Battle Arts as Anthony Corelli.
Exactly. I know personally, being in his school, that he has a heavy focus on judo, and the way I tend to put it when people ask me, it's like, do you call him Anthony or do you call him Santino? It's like, no, I call him Anthony. There are some people I call by their working names. Like, we have one of the guys at our school, Timmy O'Connor. His actual name's Devin. Everybody calls him Timmy. So some people work out like that. But the way I'd put it is that he would like to be known as former national judo champion and owner of Battle Arts Academy, Anthony Corelli, as opposed to former WWE superstar Santino Marella. Right. I know he doesn't mind the latter, but personally speaking, from my interactions with him, he prefers the former.
Well, we're hoping one day to get him on the show. We've tweeted him, we've contacted him, so hopefully he hears this interview and hears how well it went, and we'll be like, you know what? I'm going to go sit down with those guys.
It's funny, the first wrestling interview I ever did was with Rudy Blair, former 680 News correspondent. Rudy Blair runs Rudy Blair Entertainment Media, I believe it's called. He came in for a talk at my college while I was in the radio program, and we got to talking about wrestling. I told him I train at Battle Arts. He said, that's Santino, that's Anthony's school, right? I said, yep. And he's like, well, you know what? If you ever want, we'll do an interview, because he loves wrestling. He's always been involved with wrestling. He had been on live shows back in the 90s when they were here. It was like a special guest appearance thing.
Oh, Madison Square Garden. Or, sorry, not Madison Square. Maple Leaf Garden.
Yeah.
Whoops. Every Toronto listener right now is cursing my name. Cursing it.
Man, honestly, I wasn't, like, I'm only 21 years old. I wasn't really old enough for Maple Leaf Gardens.
That pains me.
So
that pains me. 21 years old.
I can't really speak to the allure of Maple Leaf Gardens, but I'm
you
sure...
You can speak to it as now being a Loblaws.
Is that what it is now?
It's a grocery
Sincerely.
store.
Wow.
It's a grocery store. But they do have some nostalgia floating around.
I do. For example, I still call it Sky Dome. I have...
Oh, I still call it Sky
Dome. I will always call it Ricoh Coliseum. I don't care if it's the Coca-Cola Coliseum now.
I will always call ACC. I will never call it the Scotiabank Arena.
Yeah, no.
No, I can't do it. All right, so let's get into... so that's the backstory. You train at Battle Arts and all that stuff. You're very in with Mr. Corelli.
But that's not where I started, to be fair. I started at a place called Squared Circle Training in Toronto.
Okay.
With Rob Fuego. I find that very important because... Even though I was only there for about a year, I didn't do a single show while I was training with them, none of that stuff. It was before they opened their Superkicked training school. They moved locations and changed ownership and all that. When I was working there, that was that was how I proved to my parents that I'd be able to do it. Because I paid for my own training out of pocket. Mm-hmm. It was about $100 a month back then, and I was only 15 years old.
That's not bad, actually, though.
It's not bad, but at 15, that's a dent in the wallet every month.
Well, at 15, $100 a month, that's your whole paycheck.
Exactly.
That's your whole month's worth of paychecks.
Yeah, because I worked about one shift a week at No Frills when I started training there. So that was what led my parents to start believing in me. And think, he's dedicated. My mom actually said recently, she's like, I had never seen you dedicated to anything so much before. Because I had done baseball. I quit soccer very early when I was young. I was like, team sports? Yeah, I like my individual time to shine.
Right, of course. And so what about basketball? Did you ever try basketball? Because that's kind of a sport where you are a team, but you still have that individuality.
You have the individuals. And I've been told... It's really tragic that I was a late bloomer because I grew from about 5'3" to 6'2" over the span of grade 10.
So you would have started as a point guard, but then eventually became a center by unfortunate growth spurt.
And because I didn't have... I never got into basketball as a kid. I never showed any natural aptitude to it, playing it in high school gym or middle school gym or anything.
So you were that weird kid that was just dribbling with his palm open like this?
I was the kid who would cherry pick. Give me a layup, I'll do it. Past that, don't ask me to do anything. And now that I'm 6'5", I'm like, I could have done it, but I still would prefer wrestling 100%.
So speaking of that, since we now know that wrestling is kind of the sport you latched onto, everyone has that moment, that memory, something that triggers the memory of when they remember. Because when you're a wrestling fan, you're a wrestling fan. And you become all in very quickly. Like for me, my defining moment was I was at my uncle's house. It was Christmas time, and he just got the tape of what was obviously an older fight. It had happened. But he got the tape of kind of a bootleg tape. Somebody had it. It was Coliseum Video, but he got a bootleg tape. Because back then, you didn't pirate or illegally stream. You just got bootleg tapes.
Yeah.
So he had the Jimmy Superfly Steel Cage match from Madison Square Garden.
Oh, yes.
And Mick Foley talks about it all the time. That was the moment that I fell in love with wrestling. As soon as he climbed the top of that cage and he did the Superfly, I was like, I don't care in what capacity till literally the day I die, live and breathe. this will be a part of my life. I was 6 years old. I'm 35 now. So we're talking almost 30 years. I have literally been in love with the business that we all cherish and love. Yeah. If you're tuning in, you love wrestling. If you're here talking about it, you love wrestling.
Yeah, you got to.
So can you remember the defining moment of when you realized that wrestling was going to be a big part of your life?
So it always, every time anybody asks me, it's like, when did you watch wrestling? Because I have a lot of friends who are very, very knowledgeable wrestling fans. One of my buddies, you know the game Quiz Up? Mm-hmm. One of my buddies, Jeff, one of my closest friends, he is #1 in Canada for Quiz Up. Just routinely. I think he's #3 in the world.
Okay.
Like, he's got ridiculous wrestling knowledge. He also, whenever we drive, he'll put on wrestling themes. He has all of the Uncaged albums downloaded on his phone.
Nice.
Like, he's got stupid knowledge, more than I have, which is crazy to me. But for me, he always jabs at me because he's like, when did you even watch wrestling? And it was so on and off. It was on and off till I want to say I was about 13 years old.
Okay.
When I was a kid, very, very into it. From the ages of 4 to 7, very, very into it. I still have The Rock's movie, the movie that was made about his career very early on. Mm-hmm. I have his biography, signed by him, that my mom got when he did a book signing in Toronto back then when he was releasing that book.
Is that when he had the lesbian turtleneck with the fanny pack?
It was after that. It was Versace shirt Rock.
Oh, it was Versace shirt Rock.
Yeah.
It wasn't early on Nation of Domination. I just got out of being Rocky Maivia, and now I'm trying to find myself.
No. It was Versace shirt with 3 buttons undone, glasses Rock.
Oh, okay, nice.
It was
oil on the chest.
Oh,
clean shaven, oiled chest.
The only person I've ever seen oiled more is David Otunga. That was when I was really into wrestling. I was watching it routinely because my dad, way back in his childhood, was a fan. He grew up in Trinidad, and he used to tell me stories about Carlos Colon coming down and doing matches and stuff like that. And that was the only idea of wrestling he had, was live shows. So when I was growing up, he would watch Raw. I would sit beside him, watch Raw as a child. Fell out of it a bit around Ruthless Aggression era. Like, for example, I didn't see the debut of John Cena live. I wasn't watching wrestling around that time. So that is kind of a spot where all my knowledge of it is retroactive. I had to go back and watch it when I was studying tape and studying certain characters. But I would say my defining moment where I said, this is something I would like to do as a living, was...
Or even when you fell in love with it, period.
Fell in love with it. It's about the same. There's 2 major moments. The ones that made me fall in love with it. The first one was watching the build-up and eventual match at WrestleMania 24 between Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair.
Great match. Great build-up.
I will never forget it. I will never forget watching it live. Not in person, but live on pay-per-view. It was the only pay-per-view I think my family has ever purchased for me, because we were not the type of family to do that type of stuff. But I remember watching that match and just being awestruck by the spectacle of it. And then the moment that I really got really into it, I think I've watched basically every single Raw since, was Dolph Ziggler night after WrestleMania cashing in Alberto Del Rio. That was wicked to me. Because I had always liked, I'd say my top 3 that I had always liked was anytime Shawn Michaels was on screen, loved him. Anytime John Morrison was on screen, loved him. Anytime Dolph Ziggler was on screen. So seeing him...
So you have a type.
I do have a type. The showman type, the very flashy, a little bit of high flying, but nothing on a Ricochet level.
But literally the guy that can literally walk out there and command 20,000 fans at any moment to either live off every word he speaks or jaw drops every move he does.
Just captivating in the ring. Yeah. Though that is my type of wrestler that I always liked, the wrestlers that I wanted to be, for example. So see